As long as there's human beings, I'll be able to have a job. And so that gave me a lot of stability in a time where I really needed that. And like, I kind of just did each step and was like really diligent with that. And climbing, I was able to preserve it as this safe space, this fun space for myself. Whereas if I had made it like my sole focus in my career, I think it would have taken that away.
Alex, obviously when you were young, you were like 19 or 20, you took that chance where you dropped out of UC Berkeley. You were in the engineering program, right?
Yeah, I finished my freshman year as a aspiring civil engineer, but I didn't exactly drop. I took a semester off, thinking that and
slippery slope.
I just never returned. Yeah, exactly, very slippery slope.
So you don't drop out, but you never return.
Yeah, exactly.
You say to yourself, like, I'll follow this path for a little bit, and that was at a time too when no one knew who you were. You never really considered yourself a generational talent. You just loved it. And you figured, hey, if it doesn't work out, like, I can always go back to school. And I know it's hard to always go back to yourself 20 years ago, but what was your thinking at that time?
I'd gotten into the youth worlds that year. I'd randomly gotten second at nationals. And so I was kind of like, and it was during the same time as the school semester. So I was like, I'll take the semester off. I'll go do the competition. I'll travel around a little bit. I'll climb. And then I'll just kind of like see how it plays out. Mm-hmm. And then I just never went back.
Yeah.
I had this either fortune or misfortune of growing up in the same region as Ethan Pringle and Kevin Jorgensen and a couple other people who wound up being professional climbers who are very, very good. And so I never won anything through my whole childhood. Like I always got smoked by all these other guys that were way better than me. And so, I was always just kind of like, I'm a good climber, not a great climber, certainly nothing like not gifted, because Chris Sharma had also come out of the same region, Northern California. Mm-hmm. And he was an example of like, this is someone who's clearly gifted at rock climbing. And I was like, well, obviously that's not me. Like I can't do any of the things that he can do. But I was like, I love climbing and I'd rather do that than study civil engineering right now. So I just gave it a shot.
Do you think that like if the sponsorships hadn't quite fallen your way, do you think you would have gone back and had a quote unquote like regular career? Do you still think you could have done the solos that you've done?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And actually, I think for me in particular, like me specifically, I think I probably couldn't have done those things. Mm-hmm. That's partially because for me with the free soloing, it's required so much volume, like so much time on rock. I do think for a lot of other climbers, they actually can achieve their physical potential and like climb their hardest grades, even with a full-time job, as long as it's not like hard physical labor or something. Mm-hmm. But I think that for the specific kind of adventure climbing that I'm doing, it just required so much time on rock and so much time outdoors and so much like hiking time and getting lost in the mountains. Like basically there's such an adventure component to it that I think it would be very hard to do that while finishing an education and having a full-time job.
Yeah. Totally. But you feel like from like on the performance side, like on that extreme end, there's maybe a path through that.
Yeah, I think on the performance side, there is a path because I think if you're training your absolute hardest as a climber, you're still only going to be able to train 30 plus hours a week or so. And that definitely leaves enough time to finish an education, like work some kind of a job, maybe not like a rigorous full-time demanding job, but you can definitely work and still train at a very high level.
Yeah. Today our guest is Michaela Kiersch, and amongst the competition and hard climbing circles, Michaela is a climber's climber. For the Midwest contingent, she's like a hometown hero who understands what it's like to put a 12-hour drive each way for a long weekend at the Red River Gorge.
She's also a freaking doctor of occupational therapy, which is, I mean, she might be one of the first people we've interviewed who's a doctor. Is that true? Have we interviewed other doctors?
I think we've interviewed other PhDs maybe.
Yeah, maybe we have, but either way, not many. So right there.
Yeah.
And she's just a total boss. I mean, I think that she's very, very well respected in the climbing community for having managed to balance all aspects of her life. And last year she became, I mean, she's already an incredibly well-known climber, but she sort of cemented her place in climbing history in a way when she became the first woman to climb both 515 and V15 in a single year. I mean, she's the first woman to climb both those grades, and then she happened to do it in a single year as well, which is it's just so impressive.
Yeah.
Though interestingly, I mean, talking to her about it, it's just funny that from her perspective, it's just another step on a long path. She's just on a journey. She's been steadily improving for decades, and it's like she's reached a very high level. I'm Alex Honnold.
I'm Fitz Cahall.
This is Climbing Gold.
My name is Michaela Kiersch. I just turned 30.
Oh, snap.
I know. I'm a professional rock climber and an occupational therapist. And yeah, I've been climbing 20 years.
Do you still consider yourself a professional climber when you're also a doctor?
Yeah, I think I can do both.
Yeah, so where did you start climbing?
I started in Chicago when I was about 6 years old. I was just the kind of kid who had a natural inclination to climb up trees, buildings, fences. So my parents took me to my local gym, and then I just never stopped. I joined the team and started competing and just kept going.
Yeah, Chicago is really known as a hotbed for sending.
Actually, when I was growing up, it kind of was because I was on the same team as Isabel Faust, who's a crusher, and Kasia Pietras and Michael O'Rourke. And so there's like some strong climbers that came out of there.
Okay. Though it's not, it's still Chicago. How close was the closest rock?
It was pretty far. Like our home crag was the Red River Gorge, which is about 7 hours by car.
Yeah, a lot of your most notable, like first big news things were hard climbs at the Red. I mean, you were doing a 14-hour driving commute every weekend to go try your project?
Yeah, we were doing like the whole weekend warrior thing and going Friday night after school and then coming back Sunday and just like going hard all weekend. But it was totally worth it. And it was the norm in the community there. So everybody was psyched and it didn't feel like this crazy thing. It's just like we would all kind of gather and do it every weekend.
Are those good memories to think of driving 14 hours back and forth to the Red?
I didn't have my driver's license for most of it. So I just got to like eat snacks and chill. And everyone said, like the adults called me on scholarship. So I just got like princess treatment. So for me, it wasn't so bad.
How'd the adults do? Actually, I mean, I'm pretty good friends with Bill Ramsey, who also did that commute like for a long time and put up a lot of the routes there and everything. But you're like, man, it just seems like, I mean, I guess for you as a passenger, you don't have to be that psyched, but for the adults, like how psyched do you have to be to drive that far?
Pretty psyched, I think, but it's also like the Red River Gorge, which in my opinion is the best sport climbing destination in the world. So
you still think that?
Yeah, I really do. I think like for me, the way that I kind of measure that is there's routes there, projects that I've sent that I'll go and repeat just for fun. It's not often that you would send something hard that like took a lot of work that you would want to get on again, There's oftentimes this feeling of, wow, I'm never getting on that again, like what a relief. But at the Red, there's routes I've done like 100 times.
Yeah, what is it that's so magical about the Red?
I think the style is there, it's heavily featured, so it kind of lends itself to creating your own beta. There's footholds everywhere and intermediates, so you can like really get in a flow there. And I think sandstone also is just like a little bit easier on your skin, so you can get a ton of pitches in a day and just like feel totally done at the end, like exhausted. And it's hard to replicate that elsewhere.
Do you think that just suits you particularly well? You're pretty short, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 5'1". It definitely suits me, but it's kind of like chicken and the egg scenario. Like, does it suit me because I grew up climbing there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, in general, though, I feel like featured walls like that suit climbers of different sizes because you can use whatever beta you want.
Yeah.
Whereas like some areas, you're sort of like, well, if you're not the size of whoever put the route up, then it's like kind of a bummer because you just can't span all the holds.
Yeah, totally. I think that style kind of suits everybody, though.
You mean having tons of holds everywhere?
Yes.
That's why everybody loves the Red.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your year. You've had a big year. What you want to just lay it out for us?
Yeah. 2024 was huge for me. I started out in Waco just going kind of for fun. I went by myself, just wanted to kind of see where my level was at, take a few new boulders, did a few V13s. I did the rock rodeo, which ended up being like my most stacked day of bouldering ever. I did a 13 and 3 12s and 2 11s or something crazy like that. Good training to get my power up before going to Spain. And then in Spain, I did 515A, Victima Perfecta, and Margalef. After Spain, I went home and trained up for bouldering because I had my first trip to Rocklands planned, and it was going super well. I broke my finger like 2 weeks before leaving. but then had an awesome, insane trip anyways. And
How does that happen?
I was trail running and I just like ate it.
No, I mean, how do you still send?
Oh.
Like, I mean, it's sad about the trail running, but I'm like, who cares about how you broke the finger? But how do you climb so hard with a broken finger?
Well, luckily it was my pinky. So
You don't use that one anyway?
I drag a lot. I think it definitely was like, I couldn't put any weight on it. So it kind of like did change a bit how I climb, and I couldn't do full crimping. But I was in amazing shape. So I could overcompensate with like the other 9 fingers.
Yeah. I'm like, geez, you should have told that to Tommy. He should have taken off the pinky instead of the index, because it really would have changed this whole scene.
Yeah, could have.
Yeah, but I mean, when you say you break your finger, though, I mean, you had surgery on the finger, you had screws put in it. It's like most people would consider that a disaster for their finger, and you just went on your normal climbing trip and sent anyway.
Well, for me, it was like, I'm either going to be sad at home with a broken finger or I'm going to be in Rocklands with a broken finger. So I wanted to like at least go and check it out. And I knew, because I have a background in rehab and hand therapy, I knew I would be able to climb with the other 9 fingers. And I didn't know how it would go and what the level would look like, but I knew I'd be able to at least get a few classics in.
And so how many classics did you get in?
A lot.
Like,
Yeah, I think it was like 20 boulders, 20 double-digit boulders or something close to that.
oh yeah, so that's like a person's lifetime tick list with your 9-fingered vacation trip.
Yeah, I like finished the trip and then got a follow-up x-ray with my surgeon to make sure that the bone was healing correctly. And then I could like weight it more and more and start strength training it again, to get it back up to speed, which worked because I was planning to go to Switzerland for a bouldering trip. And so I just like rolled it into my training for that. And I went to Switzerland alone to Ticino with the goal in mind that I wanted to try Dreamtime and all of the other 8Cs in the area. And so I did that. I like planned, I was there for 7 weeks and I was alone for the first 5, and then
Wow.
did Dreamtime, which was insane, amazing, like huge dream come true. Then I came home, turned 30, and that was my 2024.
I'm like, what a year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much to unpack in all this. I'm like, this is crazy. But first off, I'm like, where do you find the motivation to go on a 7-week solo trip and just to grind on the hardest thing you've ever tried for 5 weeks by yourself? I mean, and also, so Dreamtime specifically, did you already know that it was a problem that would suit you? Like, had you talked to people about it and you thought that like, this is something I could do, and you went there with the goal of doing Dreamtime?
I went alone because a lot of my friends my age are like, either have jobs that they can't take off that long, or they're like pregnant or just gave birth. So it was like kind of slim pickings in my pool of peers. But I also knew I wanted to be super focused. And with bouldering, like you can go alone because you don't need a belayer. I know you don't need a belayer ever, but I do. So yeah, I like wasn't that nervous to go alone, especially Switzerland is like a safe and easy country. And I'd been to the area before.
But then are you actually climbing by yourself? You just drag a bunch of pads out there and you just like post up and try hard moves over and over?
Yeah, I climbed alone. I think it took me 7 sessions and I was alone for 5 of them.
Is that not like kind of grim? You take a book or something?
Yeah, the resting was the hardest bit, like in between burns. But I think like being alone, I could just like be so focused. And I don't know, sometimes when other people are watching, you maybe don't want to like spend too much time on the holds, or like you have to, take turns and be aware, I guess. And climbing alone, I could like put the tick marks exactly how I wanted, take my time to sort out my beta, rest as long as I wanted, and just like really kind of stay in the zone. So it was intimidating at first. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but in the end, I think like it was an incredible experience. And like when I actually sent it, I was shocked that I was alone because it was Saturday. It was like 50, sunny, blue skies, and I was the only one there. And like the noon church bells like were going off in the valley, and I just like did it and was standing on top. And in the States, it was still like the middle of the night. So I couldn't even tell anyone because they were all asleep. And so it was cool for me to just have that moment like fully for myself.
That's great. I just can't believe that you could summon that level of effort totally by yourself in the woods. I mean, because particularly for bouldering, I find it hard to try that hard when I'm, even just like, it's nice to have a spotter sometimes, or like to make sure the pads are in the right spot. Or sometimes, you miraculously stick the crux and then you're doing the top out and you're suddenly like, oh my God, where's the pad? Like somebody catch me, like it gets all scary. But I guess you had everything dialed in and you just like knew.
Yeah, I had it dialed, and like the first few sessions, I didn't do the top out because it was a little scary. And then I did have a session with other people there. So I like rehearsed it a bunch. I felt really good about it. But I think I have that intrinsic try hard. If I'm on the wall, I'm going to try really hard, whether someone is there or not. I worked so hard to get to that level. Not trying hard wasn't really an option.
What is the hard work to get to that level? Like, because you've kind of casually glossed over like, oh, I was going to go on this trip, so I trained for the trip. But what does that look like, the 2 or 3 months of like training for the trip?
Yeah, I structure my training 2 days on, 1 day off. And I like stuck to that the entire training block, which is like pretty insane. Like I don't always make it that, like sometimes I have to take some extra rest days. But this training block, I was just like on one, and I do a lot of board climbing, campusing, hangboarding, like mostly just power.
One of my friends was just saying like, oh, you're talking to Michaela? I hear she does 90% of her climbing on boards. Like just straight board climbing. That's true?
Yeah, it's true. I think because on the boards, like you just have access to such a high volume of hard moves, where in the commercial setting on let's just say a V7, you'll have like 1 or 2 crux moves. But on the boards, every move can be a crux move. So you just like get that high density of hard, challenging moves. And I think like for my training, that's what I need.
Yeah, it's interesting because in some ways that's how I see board climbing in relation to sport climbing or, trad climbing or other things, where it's like, oh, when you do something on a board, you're climbing just the crux of a route or whatever. And you're saying that every move on the board is like the crux of, it's like you're distilling it down even deeper, where you're like, I only want the hardest moves all the time.
Yeah, exactly. If you're trying to train power, then you want to like pack a punch, all the powerful moves that you can, right?
Totally.
And like at the gyms here, it's not like there's hundreds of boulders to climb on the commercial sides, So like on the board, I can get 30 boulders in a session, and there's not 30 hard boulders set in the gym.
Do you do 30 hard things on a board in a session?
Yeah, like at the peak of my training, I could be at that level. Yeah.
That is a lot of hard boulders in a session. As somebody that'll be pretty psyched if I do, like, a big day for me would be like 15 or 20, and some of those are kind of easier and whatever, as you're warming up still. But I'm like, God, that is that's a lot of hard board climbs.
No one really wants to like hop on my training with me. So I'm climbing alone a lot of the time. And when you're alone, you just don't rest as much because like it's boring. There's nothing else to do. So I'm just like firing.
Yeah, but I often find that I send fewer problems that way because I've not rested enough. And so I just grind myself into a hole. I'm just trying things. I'm like, try this one. And then I sit for a second. I try the next one. I'm like, oh, I'm trying. But then by the end of it, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't send any of them. And I'm totally freaking blasted. But you're doing that, but you're actually sending them, huh?
Well, I don't really go into it with like the idea of sending or not. It's more about like, what can I get out of this boulder? Like I don't log any of my climbs on the apps or anything. I do a lot of repeats if I found like a specific move helpful in my training, or if I'm like, oh, this is a weakness, I need to like do this boulder every session. I make lists like that.
Do you have some boulders that you do every session?
Yeah, or like sets of boulders, like like when I'm out of shape, it's like, okay, these are the boulders that you need to like work up to then do the medium set and then the hard set, kind of to track my level.
I shudder to even imagine your easy set. I'm sure it's still like insanely hard. You're like, oh God.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like my level fluctuates a lot throughout the year.
Oh yeah.
Like significantly. And I think like that's a good thing mentally, physically, like I give myself breaks.
That's interesting because I think, for somebody that the casual listener would think that if you're climbing 515, sending V15, that you must just be bone crushing all the time. How big of a variation do you experience through the year?
A lot, significant. I mean, like, I don't know if I can like really quantify it with a grade.
Well, like, are there times in the year where you couldn't climb V12?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it would obviously depend on the boulder, but yeah, like if I tried Dreamtime right now, I couldn't do it. That's for sure. But I think that's like part of pushing yourself to the limit. It's like, it's not your limit if you could do it all the time, all year.
Yeah, I feel personally attacked by that a little bit. I'm like, oh, geez, because I basically have never really experienced like peaks. And, I'm just kind of like, I have like a level and I just maintain that level all the time. I'm like, I don't know if I ever actually experienced my limit then by that standard. But I also have never trained hard enough I'm just like, huh.
Yeah, I think I do train really hard, and it's kind of this all-encompassing thing when I'm in it. And it would not be possible for me to sustain that all year round, mentally or physically.
So do you take an off season, or like when are your breaks built in?
After a trip, like I'll come home and relax and like hang out with friends. And
Where's home? Where do you live?
I live in Salt Lake City.
Oh, yeah, cool. Where all the best climbers live, huh?
Yeah, all the comp climbers anyways.
Yeah, well, that's good for you for training, no? At least it's like strong people around.
Honestly, I don't really see them because they're like on the slabs and swinging around and doing like dynos and crap that I don't do anymore.
You're only on some crimpy board set to 50 degrees and they're only like running across slabs in their tennis shoes. You're like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I'll see them sometimes. Like some of them will hit me up when they want to do a board session. That's when I see them.
We'll be back with more after the break.
It's the North Face, sponsoring Climbing Gold this year. Alex, what is your action suit?
Well, my action suit, actually, when I'm at home, I think of it as my outdoor clothes because I actually do everything in either outdoor clothes or indoor clothes. And so my outdoor clothes are the super dirty outdoor, the synthetic layers, the fleeces, the puffies, the pants. I think I took this from Mark Twight maybe, but I think I do often think of it as my action suit. You're like, oh, this is the suit you put on to go outdoors. I mean, and particularly on expeditions like Antarctica, where you literally can't leave your tent without your action suit on because the conditions are so extreme that like you can't even get out of bed without putting on all the layers and the correct layers with the wicking bottoms and the mid layer and the outer layer and the waterproof layer. That's like in the most extreme environments, you do really have to wear the suit. It's like going to space. Like even when I'm doing casual climbing at home, I'm sort of like, oh, you may as well have the warmest thing, the lightest thing. And so I'm basically always using Summit Series, which is athlete tested, expedition proven. Whatever you practice in is what you want to perform in. If you're doing scary climbing all the time in a particular pair of pants, a particular jacket, you know that they fit, you know how they move, like that's what you're going to wear for the extreme things as well. The North Face has you covered. Find your action suit at thenorthface.com. We got to be able to make a decent AG1 ad because AG1 is the one thing that I actually do use every single day.
How do you drink your AG1? Do you put it in a smoothie or something, Alex?
No, I just drink it in water. I just do a little health drink every morning.
Is it like part of your everyday?
I would say AG1 is a big part of my expedition routine because anytime I travel, I always take the travel packs and I start every morning that way. And it feels like a good, healthy habit to maintain, particularly when I'm away from the house. But really, I drink it every morning either way. It just feels even more important when I'm on expeditions.
So you feel like AG1 is your insurance policy for kicking ass?
Yeah. I think without AG1, I probably would never send. No, I mean, it's a healthy habit that I like and I think serves me well. And I believe it enough that it's been several years and I'm still going.
And they've updated the formula.
AG1 Next Gen is a clinically backed daily health drink that combines a multivitamin, probiotic, and blend of superfoods into one scoop. In a clinical trial, AG1 Next Gen increased healthy bacteria in the gut by 10x, which is kind of amazing.
That is.
I'm really curious, do I want 10 times more healthy gut bacteria? Maybe that's too much healthy gut bacteria.
No such thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What's AG1 offering Climbing Gold listeners right now?
AG1's offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. So you get a welcome kit, a bottle of LMNT, and 5 free travel packs, which is what I always use on expeditions. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/climbinggold to get the offer. That's drinkag1.com/climbinggold.
Joking about comp climbers and the whole thing. I mean, you started with competition climbing a bit.
Yeah.
What drove your transition to pure outdoor climbing?
So I think like as a kid, it's just kind of natural to join a climbing team and they're almost all competitive just because like you can't really be 8 years old and just like run around a climbing gym. You kind of need that structure. And I loved it. I loved being on the team. I loved competing. The style was more similar to outdoor climbing when I was competing.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. But what really kind of pushed me more towards outside was when I was in college and starting graduate school, because the schedule is rigid. Like there's no flexibility there. And the competition schedule is also rigid. And I just couldn't make them line up. But while you're in school, you can go on trips during the summer or on spring break or winter break. So for me, that was like more natural. And I do love it more. I think like towards the end of my competition, that's when it switched to being the combined format, which I just didn't love as much. And so for me, it felt more like an organic transition. And I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, you didn't love having to speed climb and having to do all the different things at the same time?
Well, I think with the style transition as well, I'm just like, quite frankly, not very good at it. Like the dynamic, swingy coordination style, and speed climbing is definitely not a passion of mine. And because of those two things, I would have to spend so much time doing a style of climbing that I don't love when I could do something I love all the time, which is outdoor climbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, did you always love outdoor climbing more?
Not necessarily more, but I think because I was doing it on the weekends when I was younger at the Red, like I always had it in my life. I never really experienced a period where I was only gym climbing.
Yeah, you mentioned that part of the drive to outdoor climbing was just trying to reconcile your conflicting schedules, that you just don't have time for both if you're going to grad school and also having to go to freaking all over the world for World Cups. And it made me think, I feel like you've always been a bit of a like folk hero to the everyday climber, like basically for like working climbers. You know, it's like as a pro, but sort of an accessible pro who also has a job or a real education, and like basically balancing the same things. And also, I mean, just growing up in Chicago, it's like basically for your entire climbing life, you've always had to juggle the things that so many average climbers have to deal with, which is like, oh, you know, I want to send my project, but the crag is too far away and I have family obligations, or like my job is demanding and whatever. I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, it's an interesting position. Like you're really in some ways the polar opposite of like the van dweller that just climbs all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you work hard and then you peak for the key moments.
So I think what happened, my mom died when I was 15, and it kind of like left this like chaos in my life at like already kind of a chaotic age. And my parents had been married almost 30 years. So when my mom died, I feel like I lost my dad a bit in that too, because he was just like so grief stricken and unable to parent really. Like he just was like taken out by it, understandably so. And so for me, it became this like sink or swim moment where it was like, okay, what are you going to do with your life? Like you're in charge now. And my mom, she was sick and she was like in and out of hospitals, and the healthcare workers that were most impactful in her recovery were occupational therapists. And I want to be that for someone else, like what they were for me. And because you need to have like XYZ education in order to achieve that, it sort of set me in this like linear trajectory towards that, like high school, college, grad school. And then the end is like this career that will sustain me for the rest of my life, wherever I am. As long as there's human beings, I'll be able to have a job. And so that gave me a lot of stability in a time where I really needed that. And like, I kind of just like did each step and was like really diligent with that. And climbing, I was able to preserve it as this like safe space, this fun space for myself. Whereas if I had made it like my sole focus in my career, I think it would have taken that away. And I really needed joy in my life. So I'm glad that I kept it completely separate, because I had this really joyful pursuit that I happened to be talented at, and also like the stability and this goal that came from school. And so it was kind of just one foot in front of the other for a long time.
So when you were young and these other climbers are driving you to and from the Red, like 14 hours in the car all the time, did they know what you were going through with family? And, you know, is that sort of the community that supported you through that?
Yeah, they knew. It was a very small, tight-knit community. And actually, she had passed away when I was on my way home from the red.
Oh man.
So we like got home at like 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and like she had called me on the way and was like so pissed that I was getting home so late. And then she had cancer, and one of the side effects of radiation and chemotherapy is that your blood vessels weaken. And so a blood vessel burst, and she died like very suddenly and somewhat unexpectedly, and was at the hospital when I got home from the red. And it was Isabel who went to the hospital with me, Isabel Faust.
Wow. That's so heavy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it was like a horrible time in my life, definitely. I think it's like a little bit weird to say, but I think it was like one of the greatest gifts that she gave me was the lessons I learned in the wake of all of that, and like the skills that I had to get and the person I became because of it. But obviously I would like give it all back just to have my mom.
Yeah, so interesting. I don't know if you know, but my dad died when I was 19, sort of similar, unexpected, just died. And yet, you know, I don't know if I got any of the healthy learnings that you got. Don't know if any of the things, you know, I'm sort of like, man, it's just annoying that you do everything better than everybody else. It's like, God, you know, it's like similar levels of sort of like teenage people where I was like, oh, you know, it's like, don't expect your dad to die unexpectedly. And I think that it did some of the same things for me that it did for you in terms of how you live your life and being intentional and like, you know, just realizing that it's up to you to make what you will with your life at a, you know, straight away. But then I'm like, man, but then you became a doctor and climbed all the hardest things. So I'm like, I just lived in my car for 10 years. I'm like, geez Louise.
When I was growing up, that was definitely kind of the norm for pro climbers, not necessarily going to college, just committing yourself to climbing full time and kind of living this rugged lifestyle. But for me, it was never pro climbing or school. It was always that I was going to do both at a high level. So I didn't feel like I needed to sacrifice one for the other. And I just knew that like sometimes school would come first and sometimes climbing would come first, and kind of just navigating that balance. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I think you know that you're also exceptional and one of a kind.
We'll be back with more after the break.
Alex, are you a pancake guy?
I feel like it's impossible to feel full from eating a pancake.
That's
like,
how I
you have
feel
to eat
about
like 100 of
pancakes,
them,
too.
and you have to like lather them in peanut butter and stuff. And even then, you're hungry like 20 minutes later, and you're like, "What the fuck's the point?"
What if I told you there's a pancake that could take care of that issue?
There is a pancake that can take care of this issue. It's Kodiak Cakes.
Kodiak Cakes. Rawr.
Tell me about Kodiak Cakes.
Kodiak Cakes are delicious and nutritious, packed with protein. Breakfast at the Honnold household is often oatmeal or pancakes. The kids get up, Sonny gets all fired up, we whip something up in the kitchen, and we have something delicious and nutritious and filling for the kids.
What else does Kodiak make?
I think Kodiak Cakes are known for the pancakes, but actually I think we eat more of the oatmeal at the house. And they also make these insane little dessert nuggets that you microwave that Sonny was making, like little brownies that she makes in the microwave. They were like the ultimate treat. They're so good, it's insane. Fuel your spring and summer adventures with a quick breakfast packed with the real good stuff. 100% whole grains, protein, and a whole lot of flavor. Find Kodiak Cakes at your local grocery store. They're the ones with the bear on them. Learn more at kodiakcakes.com.
Are you a person that deals like, or have you gotten old enough that you deal with cramps at all?
I've never cramped, really. Great.
Welcome to your 40s, Alex. It's a party.
But I mean, I know young people who cramp sometimes. I just don't cramp. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't either until like 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah? Okay, we'll see. We'll see.
Last week, dude, I was doing a 50K. I wiped out super hard. I stood up and then my like, hamstring just like fully shut down like 25 miles into this race. It was like just mayhem. And I stopped and I like put an LMNT into my water bottle and I drank it and I totally like nursed it and it worked. I got through it. I thought I was done. I thought I was like totally hosed in the race. Got through it. Thanks, LMNT.
Dude, see, I'm just not old enough to properly appreciate it. I'm just kind of like, yeah, it's nice to have an electrolyte drink. You know, it seems, you know, it's nice sometimes. It makes big outings feel better. I'm like, oh my God, you would have DNF'd if you hadn't had your element.
That's what happens when you're 8 years older And you're Gen X and not a millennial.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, if you're exercising and you're sweating, you are losing electrolytes. And so depending on what you're doing and the intensity at which you're doing it, you have to replenish your electrolytes or else you cramp like Fitz.
LMNT is formulated for anyone on a mission to restore health through hydration and is perfectly suited for athletes, folks who are fasting, or those following keto, low carb, whole food, or paleo diets.
Get your free LMNT sample pack with any purchase at drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. That's drinklmnt.com/climbinggold. And so how do you decide which climbing projects are worth the kind of commitment? You know, it's like, when do you decide, like, I'm going to spend 7 weeks alone in Switzerland just trying to send a project? Like, how do you decide that Dreamtime is worth it to you?
Yeah, I think like for me, I really wanted, bouldering has never been my sole focus. And 2024 was the year that I really wanted to kind of change that and like see what I could do in that discipline. So I knew I wanted to go to Ticino because there's like such a high density of really hard boulders in that area. And I actually had tried Dreamtime before. I sent La Rambla, and afterwards I was like so psyched that I went to Ticino just for fun, kind of like a relaxed trip to just like boulder, because I had been sport climbing and to check it out. And I had friends who were there. And so I just went for 2 weeks, quick trip. And I tried the stand of Dreamtime, which is V12. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do all the moves. Nowhere close. And was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to level up if that's ever going to be something that I can try. So going into the trip this fall, I was not thinking that it was going to go down because I was remembering how hard it was for me in the past. So I had a list of several boulders on my list that I wanted to try, but Dreamtime was the first one that I went to. And I did all of the moves in my first session except for the top out and was like, oh my God, I have leveled up. And it was the one, first V15, it's Dreamtime. It's gorgeous. It's insane. Like, it was on the top of my list. So kind of after that first session, I was like, all right, I'm locked in. And yeah, it was natural.
Yeah. Can you actually describe Dreamtime? How many moves is it? Like, how does it break down? Like, what is it?
Yeah. So Dreamtime is actually a fairly long boulder. It's like sit start, very technical edges with super technical heel hooks. And it's, I don't know, maybe between 15 and 20 moves. And you have to keep body tension the whole time. The individual moves, when you do them correctly, don't feel so hard. But if you are like a little bit out of the position, that's where it gets cruxy. And it kind of all culminates on this stand start V12 off of 2 razor crimps. And it's like a giant move to the left and then a giant move to the right, followed by like a technical V8 top out.
Wow. So when you were saying that you practice the top out, that's like a technical V8.
Yeah, it's like heel hooky, body tensiony, and then you have to like mantle up fully, like kind of font style, just push up.
That's not scary to do by yourself? If you're like totally maxed out of your, you've just climbed the hardest thing in your life and you're totally pumped and you're like, oh, this is kind of a scary top out.
I don't know. If I had fallen at the top after sending like the hard part, like, let me roll down the hill. Like, just like, I'm going to keep rolling all the way to the parking. Like, I would be so devastated.
You're willing to break both your ankles in that case? 'Cause you're like, I deserve it.
But I do think having like kind of an endurance background helped me on that boulder. Like, it was definitely my style, which is cool. Like, I spend a lot of time trying my anti-style to level up, but then to do something in my style and feel really strong and powerful is also a cool feeling.
Yeah, that's, the saying, like, train your weaknesses, but then play to your strengths.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to perform, like, perform the thing that you're best at.
Yeah, totally.
That's why I solo a lot of 5'9", 5'10". I'm like, that is a real personal strength.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you like question me climbing alone and not having that motivation when you spend so much time climbing alone as well.
Yeah, but you don't have to try that hard. You're not like, there's no risk of falling. Like climbing on easy terrain, it's just like, it's so easy. It's so relaxing.
Yeah.
I love climbing by myself, but it's just, for me, it's hard to summon that like, just, like summon the beast, like full fire.
Yeah.
I find it slightly easier if there's somebody else there,
Like screaming at you.
Well, not necessarily that, but I really do find spotting to like with bouldering when you just don't really know how you're gonna fall and you're gonna land on your head on some weird thing.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose if you've worked a boulder long enough and like with enough control and you just like know where you're gonna fall and how it's gonna be, then maybe. But I've like never really done solo bouldering sessions. Like I don't know if there's a single boulder in the world that I care about enough to like work on like that.
Yeah, I think the landing is very flat and like very chill, and I made sure that it was safe. And there's other boulders that I wouldn't have tried alone. It just worked out. There's tons of pads up there at Dreamtime, so I felt comfortable the whole time, and like I had the top dialed, like super dialed.
Yeah, no, I mean it's amazing. So your 2024, did it feel like a breakout year for you, or did it just feel like the product of so many years of hard work and and just having a little more time since you finished your education? How does it feel for you personally?
I think I've had kind of a linear trajectory in climbing where I like haven't made any huge jumps in grades with my sending. It's kind of been like one step after the other. With bouldering, I would say it was maybe more of a breakout year for me just because I never spent that much time actually doing it. And so like starting in Waco and then going to Rocklands and then to Chino felt like I was really leveling up in that discipline. But I had like sent multiple V14s, AB plus before Dreamtime. So I don't think it was necessarily like a shock to myself that I had done it.
Yeah. But isn't that the funny thing though with sort of breakthroughs like that is that from the outside, you can be first woman to climb 515, V15. This is sick. And you're kind of like, well, actually, I only added 1 grade to my bouldering and had a pretty good trip here and there. You're like, yeah, this is just the product of years of hard work and just like a slight improvement.
Yeah.
But to the outside public, you'd be like, that's incredible. Like, it's just so, like that's such a big leap.
Yeah, I think for me, climbing V15 and 515 was cool because when I started climbing, that was like the level. That's when like Fred put up Dreamtime in 2000, Chris did biography in 2001. So for me, that was the golden standard. I'm like 6 years old and that's what's happening, and it's not something that I really thought I was capable of until much more recently. So it was cool to be at that top level, and they were inspiring me when I was in kindergarten, and now there's kids in kindergarten who can look to me and be inspired, and that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because I've always felt the same way. The things that I was a little kid are sort of inspiring, like Chris Sharma climbing the mandala or something in Bishop, like a classic V12.
Yeah.
But and it's interesting how to some extent we just rise to the level of our childhood expectations, where it's like I still have never really bouldered that hard, and I still think of like V12 or V13 as being really, really hard because that's basically like the hardest thing in the world when I started climbing. Like V17 to me like doesn't mean anything. I'm like, no, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Like V13 is hard. But it's just interesting where like your expectations, like so much of it just matters of where the standard is when you start climbing.
Yeah.
Like what you look to is like, this is what's possible.
For me, it was like a developmental period, right? Like I'm learning how to climb and kind of exploring my own potential in that way, and being able to see these like huge giants and climbing like crushing grades that like I couldn't even comprehend at the time. I think like it's hard for that not to leave an impression. And of course, like in that time, we didn't have social media either. So my access to climbing media was copies of Climbing Magazine and Urban Climber that had the photos of Chris and Fred and everybody like on the pages. And like, I just looked at the same photos over and over and over and read the same articles. It's like, was such a impactful time.
Hmm. Is it important to you being the first woman to climb 1515?
I think it's important to acknowledge female accomplishments, but I didn't do it to be like the first woman to accomplish that. Like I wanted to climb 515 and V15, and it's cool that I was the first, but I definitely don't think I'll be the first and only for very long. Like there's so many powerful women right now in climbing. When one rises, we all rise, and we just like collectively can bring the level up together.
Yeah, it's interesting because there what, something like a dozen-ish women who have done either grade, if I'm right, like 515-ish or V15-ish.
Yeah.
How many women have climbed V15-ish? Like under a dozen of each, something like that, right?
Yeah.
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 So somewhere in that neighborhood, but it's just interesting that you're the first person to overlap in both, because many of the women who have bouldered 8C or V15 surely could climb 515 if they tried, if they found the right route, if they worked at it, and vice versa. And yet it's interesting that nobody else has really put the effort in.
I mean, it's definitely not easy to do both. To go back and forth takes a lot of work because it's like a completely different training cycle and different strengths. If you really love bouldering, it makes sense to just like stay at that level in bouldering. And like, why would you switch and get pumped?
Well, I meant more like a lot of the people bouldering at that level are also comp climbing it, like are climbing near that level of routes anyway, just as a product of their normal training. And so you're kind of like,
Yeah, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I mean, it's like definitely takes a lot of work, I think, in either of them. I think there's a lot of people with the potential, but it's not just something that you can like go and do, like just because you're capable of it doesn't mean that you could just like go do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you think it is harder to switch back and forth between disciplines?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, at least, the training looks completely different.
What is the route climbing? What's the difference for you? Is like more volume?
Spending more time on circuits and doing power endurance and 4x4s. But I think also tactically, it's very different. Like there's a lot for me of mental work that goes into sport climbing. And like while you're on the route itself, being able to relax and like rest and pace and things like that, but also just the actual act of going on a sport climbing trip where you get to try your project maybe once or twice most in a day, and bouldering you can try it like 20 times. It's like a completely different strategy.
Yeah. Which do you prefer?
I think I'm better at sport climbing. I feel most myself when I'm sport climbing. I really love that flow that I can find, but I think bouldering is much more social and more fun. There's people that you go with, and
yeah, bouldering is more superficially fun.
Yeah, it's like more experiential, and especially in the gym, like training for bouldering is way easier, and like training for sport climbing sucks. It like just kind of hurts all the time.
Do you think that's why there's so many strong boulders out there?
I think in the States, there's more access to hard boulders. Like we don't have that many hard sport climbs in the States, like above 9A, like really is slim picking. So I think that goes into it for sure. Because you'll see a lot more hard sport climbers in Europe where the density is a lot higher.
But I meant more because the training is so much more chill. I mean, I've had other friends talk about that where it's like, like kids these days just want to go into the gym, boulder hard. Basically it's like it's so easy, not easy, but it's more comfortable to train bouldering, what you're describing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. But also you get that like reward of now I can go outside and climb a hard boulder.
Yeah, the hardest things. Yeah, totally. Actually, in a way, it seems like your whole strategy in climbing is to train super hard, get to a high level, and then go on a trip and perform. Is that the style, or do you ever have like home projects?
I have home projects. I mean, I was working at a hospital up in Ogden, which is like 45 minutes north of Salt Lake, and there's like a ton of boulders there. And that's actually my first V14 was in the boulder field, and I would try it after work, like change out of my scrubs and like put on my climbing shoes. So, but there's not so much super close to Salt Lake. Like Joe's I go to sometimes, that's like 3 hours, but then you find a lot of people in Salt Lake going to Vegas or St. George, it's like still kind of a trip to get there.
You can always move to Vegas. Plenty of hard stuff here.
Yeah, that's for sure.
What do you feel like you learned from your 2024?
I definitely dialed in my training this year. And like it was a little bit of guess and check for a couple of years after I finished school. What am I going to do with all my time? What is the best way forward with training? So I think like I'm finally like pretty settled and got my systems dialed. A cool lesson for me was that like I can dream even bigger than I thought. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied to a grade, but I think grades are useful to kind of track progress over time. I think I'm leaving 2024 with more question marks on my abilities instead of less. I definitely have more to give. I don't know that it would necessarily be correlated to like a higher grade. Yeah, but I can definitely like try harder and dig deeper. I don't think Dreamtime was the peak for me in bouldering. It went down actually pretty fast, like 7 sessions is not that much, I think. And for bouldering, but I definitely think there's potential for me to try things like multiple seasons, multiple years in both disciplines. So it's the current peak. Like I definitely feel I'm proud of myself and I've climbed like my hardest level in 2024, but I think I can go like even harder.
Yeah. Where do you look for inspiration in all this? Like, how do you maintain the fire to just keep trying that hard?
If I'm putting a significant amount of time into something, I want to feel like I'm giving it my best and like doing everything I can to kind of like maximize that opportunity. And I just work really hard when I look at the aesthetics and the history. And I think there's so many like beautiful, incredible climbs out there that it's not hard to like narrow down the dream lines for me.
Does it feel like you're chasing history, or do you even think about that or notice that?
I joke with Chris sometimes that I'm just like following in his footsteps. Like everything he's done is like on my list. I definitely have been inspired by like Chris and Fred and legends like that. But I am trying to find my own way in my climbing career. I'm really just going after things that like I'm personally inspired by, kind of independent of who has already done them.
Mm. After such a successful year, is there any thought of just doing that full time, like climbing full time, rather than having a real job as well?
Not really, because I don't feel hindered by my job at all. Like there's kind of no reason to stop. I love it. And like because I have enjoyment out of it, I don't really see like I don't think it's holding me back from climbing. If anything, it's like nice to have kind of something else that I'm passionate about that like I can take my mind off climbing from time to time. I'm not going to be climbing at this level forever. Like I do see myself having a family. I really want to be a mom and I'm not totally sure what my climbing is going to look like at that time, but I want to be free to choose for myself if I'm going to like keep doing it like at a high level or if it's going to become more of a hobby for me. I'm not sure, but I want to give myself like the freedom for it to be organic and what I want. For me, climbing is something I love right now, but it's not something that I feel like I'm going to have to love forever. Like I don't ever really want to feel like I'm forcing it. And I've set myself up to have like a really full, well-rounded and enriching life with or without it. And I like myself for who I am, whether I'm climbing or not. So I think like having that freedom is like really empowering.
And I'm like, honestly, you have the healthiest approach to climbing of maybe anyone we've ever interviewed on Climbing Cold, which I'm sort of like, oh, geez. Actually, that might not be true. There are a couple other people who are like also very well adjusted, very, leading healthy lives. But I'm sort of like, man, for having achieved the level of success that you have in climbing, it's just rare for someone to have, despite the fact that you're so good at rock climbing, you could just walk away from it and be like, like life is still pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's by design, I wanted to feel like that because you never know if there's going to be an injury or, I might wake up and not want to climb that day or the next day or the next day.
Not want to train.
Yeah. And like, I want to be okay with that. Like, if I don't want to do it, then it is what it is. And I'm going to be happy without it. Like right now, I love it and I hope to continue loving it. But I do know that my relationship with climbing is going to change. And I hope that it does with the different chapters of my life.
Yeah. I mean, that's really healthy because, it's like right now your climbing is so focused around high performance. And it's like, even if you didn't have a family or anything like that, at some point you age out of that and it's like, you just can't perform forever. And so it's like, you have to have some other relationship around climbing.
Yeah, I think I look forward to like being a mom, like watching T-ball in like a lawn chair and just like chilling, like I don't know that I want to be like in the climbing gym watching climbing competitions. I mean, if my child loves climbing, then so be it. But I do look forward to like expanding and learning about other sports and other passions like for the rest of my life. And I think I know that I can make room in my life with climbing. And I'm super happy that it's my thing right now. But I know like that I want to have other things in the future too.
Does it feel like life right now feels balanced or does it feel like you have a bunch of balls in the air and you're frantically trying to catch them?
I wouldn't say that it's balanced because I think climbing is my main focus right now. Like there's no doubt about that, but I definitely don't feel frantic about it. I feel like I worked really hard in school to get my degree and to have my job. And part of it was the flexibility that I knew I would have. And so I feel really good about that. And I feel really good about that skill set. I feel comfortable with the amount of time I'm putting into climbing. And I feel fulfilled by my friends, my family, my husband. Like, honestly, I feel like everything that I worked for in like teenage and early 20s,
It's all freaking working.
yeah, I'm finally there. Like, I've done it. Like, everything I wanted, I like was able to work hard and achieve.
So much of what you're describing in your lifestyle, like with the job, with the flexibility and, a stable relationship, it's like basically so many aspects of your life are so well settled that it allows you the sort of mental bandwidth to try really hard in other ways. And I've actually, I've talked to my wife about that a fair amount, is that in some ways the stability of a family brings some benefits to your climbing, in that, instead of constantly wondering like where you should be going or what you should be doing, you're kind of like, well, I'm blocked in for this amount of time in this place, and like I have a stable living situation and everything in my life is pretty healthy, and that allows me the bandwidth to just try hard in this one thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm like super lucky. My husband is incredible and like such a good partner and so supportive of me and my climbing. And like, he likes to be anonymous. That's why he's not on my social media.
Oh yeah.
But I think that's healthy too. It's like, he is like happy to support me in his own way and doesn't need to like be a part of it necessarily.
How does he support your sending? I mean, other than like sending you to Switzerland for 5 weeks, but like, is that supportive, or would him coming and spotting be more supportive?
No, well, he did actually come at the end of my trip. Like, we joke that he's like my closer. Like, he comes in when I'm like haggard and tired, and like at the end of the trip when mentally I'm like at my wit's end, he like comes and he like seals the deal, like ends the trip with me. But no, I think like, just like,
does he have a real job?
Yeah, he works for Black Diamond.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So he just doesn't have the flexibility, like he can't just spend 7 weeks in Switzerland.
He does come with on some trips. Like, we were together in Rocklands this summer, but he's not like big into sport climbing. So he's like, you're on your own. Go figure that one out. Like, find a partner and do your thing. Which is cool. Like, his climbing is totally separate from mine, and he has his own goals and his own relationship with it. And like, he empowers me to have the same for my climbing. And like, we're very different in the way that we approach it, but it's cool because like, we're very supportive of each other and understanding.
How much did your parents know about your climbing? Do you suspect that your mom would be proud of what you've accomplished since then? And, is your dad still following everything that you're doing and psyched?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, he knows that I'm good at climbing, and that's like enough for him. He can't like fully
he
comprehend.
doesn't know anything about the grades.
Yeah, he's like always losing track of them, and like, I think he's very proud. He loves, like, he has like Google alerts for my name. So like, if I'm mentioned in an article, he'll know before I know, and he'll just like send them to me, and he's like so psyched about it. I think he's just proud because he knows I work really hard. I mean, I'm sure my mom would be proud. I'm proud of myself. And so if that's any indication, then I hope that she would be too.
Thank you, Michaela, for sharing your story and chatting with us. And indeed, Michaela was right. She might have been the first to complete the V15 515 link up, but she would not be the last. Since we spoke with her, Brooke Rabitou also joined the 1515 Club. Climbing Gold is created by Duct Tape Than Beer. Alex Honnold is our host. Today's episode was written by Marco Seiler Gonzalez with additional editing and mixing by Evan Phillips. Music today by Joya, Cold Stored Precision Unit, and Brennan O'Connell. Skylar Perwins is our social media producer. Our creative director is me, Fitzcahall. Our executive producer are Jonathan Retzik and Ben Endy for RXR Sports, and Lisi Hendricks and Becca Cahal for Duct Tape Than Beer. Thanks for listening.